Welcome. Welcome to the Toronto Seniors for Climate Day of Action. I'm Helen. I'm Helen, and I'll be taking us through this eventful afternoon. What better way to celebrate Canada's National Seniors Day and International Day of Older Persons than to come together to talk about the future and how we can all make it a better place for us and the generations to come. Welcome people from the rally, and welcome people online watching the live stream. The live stream is being recorded and will be available on the Seniors Climate YouTube channel. The rally in the event you're about to participate in is also being filmed for a nonprofit documentary for Seniors for Climate. I think you might already know, but the City of Toronto has proclaimed today Seniors Climate Day. And acknowledges that seniors working with the city is one of the ways forward to address climate change. The proclamation is posted for people to read on the doors and obviously on the City of Toronto website. Perhaps like me, when you read the traditional media sources and the new social media sources, you say to yourself, what is happening? Today, we are happening. In more than 70 communities across Canada, we are bringing together seniors who can bring the message to governments across the land that we want emergency action to stop the use of fossil fuels, save our forests, our water, and our air, and bring support to Indigenous peoples and our youth. Our Toronto event has 3 sponsoring organizations. GASP, our Grandmothers Act to Save the Planet. They care deeply about the world that our children, grandchildren, and 7 generations will inherit. They are advocates for the common good and activists for a sustainable world. CALL is Climate Action Lifelong Learners. CALL's purpose is to bring lifelong learners together in the fight against climate change and biodiversity loss. SCAN is Seniors for Climate Action Now. SCAN informs and mobilizes seniors in an effort to prevent more climate catastrophes. We have engaging speakers, a world-renowned dub poet, a brilliant roots musician, and rocking singers to learn from and listen to in the next 90 minutes. And just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. There will be an intermission. There are restrooms down the stairs to my left. There are signs leading the way. Please remember this is an old building, so the washrooms are small. There is also an accessible restroom near the south door over to my left. Please walk on the outside of the seated area at the back and sides when you're making your way. And please wait for the gap between speakers to leave and return to your seat. There is also instructions about how to use the restrooms in the Eaton Center. There is a sign over here, and there are little pieces of paper that will give you directions about how to get there and how to come back. And I'd like to remind you, please turn off your cell phones. Finally, you each received a climate pledge when you walked in. On the back, there is a code, a QR code, which will lead you to the Seniors for Climate website. You can sign your pledge and sign up for the mailing list for Seniors for Climate so that you'll know every other event that's going to be happening with Seniors for Climate. It is a pleasure and honor to welcome Tori Kress in Anishinaabe Chimising. Tori is an Indigenous rights advocate.
Anani Bojo, Nagonsekwe Indigenous, Wabshishi and Dodam, Chimnising and Donjaba, Anishinaabe Padawadami Kwayandao. My name is Tori Kress. I'm an Indigenous rights activist. I've worked under many banners, the Idle No More banner, Water Warriors banner, and just an overall fighting for my own rights as an Indigenous woman. I've been doing this for a long time now, like many of you. My introduction into activism was my mother bringing me to the Oka rallies in Niagara Falls and here in Toronto. And I was 11 and 12 when I got my first taste of Indigenous rights activism. And it was a very powerful moment for me. And I continue to fight to this day. Before I begin, I'd like to share a song with you all. It's a prayer song, and if any of you are familiar with Josephine Mandelman's work, this is a song she encourages everybody to sing to the water. This song was written by Doreen Day. She lives in so-called US. She wrote this on behalf of her grandson. I'm going to sing it 4 times in the 4 directions, and it's called the water song. It's called the Nibi song. And what it says is, water, we love you. Water, we thank you. Water, and we respect you. So it's all to the water. It's sung in Anishinaabe which is like my traditional language. But I encourage you to learn it in your own traditional languages and sing it to the water as often as possible. Every day, actually, because as we know, water has memory. Western science is only starting to catch up to Indigenous knowledge. And one of those things is that water is alive and water has memory, and we can affect the outcome of water and, put positive energy into it when we sing to it. So I'm going to start in the east. No, you don't have to. Please be comfortable. Nibe Gijage Higo Kimi Gwachawe Ni Mingo Gishawe Ni Mingo Nibe Gijage Higo Kimi Gwachawe Ni Mingo Gishawe Ni Mingo Nibe Gijage Higo Kimi Gwachawe Ni Mingo Gijawe Ni Mingo Nibe Gijage Higo Kimi Gwachawe Ni Mingo Gijawe Ni Mingo. So that's a prayer song, and I really do encourage all of you to learn it and sing it and share it. That's climate action. It was a gift for everyone to use. In the Indigenous rights movement, our existence is Indigenous rights. We were supposed to be eliminated through the residential school program and through Indian Act. I was a little nervous to come here today because it's so fresh after the TRC day. And first, personally myself, I don't think we're at a place of reconciliation. I believe we're still in the truth mode. And there's a lot of truth to be told, and there's a lot of truth still needs to come out. One of the things that I do is in praying for the water, prayer songs, singing, that is, you know, that's climate action for us. I've done the work in northern BC, in northern Alberta, in northern Saskatchewan, and I've got to bear witness to the devastation that is the tar sands. I got to live there on the land and bear witness to what my friends and what my new relatives endure on a daily basis. And that's the extraction, the expansion, and what's happening in that territory is a possibility in a blue map or a blueprint for what can happen here in Ontario. We have to be careful with this just clean transition to green energy because all of those so-called critical minerals are located in Indigenous traditional territory, and the exploratory mining has already begun, and sacred sites like Sundance grounds have already been impacted by exploratory mining. It's happening now. So when we talk about this clean green transition and a just transition, know that it's already not happening. And so far, these are just words. The province of Ontario has made it so easy for mining companies to get into Indigenous territories. They have included us, Indigenous peoples. Indian Affairs of the province was amalgamated into natural resources and mining in the province when Doug Ford took over. So we're a natural resource. So these are the things that folks need to think about when they talk about climate justice and climate energy. Some of the work that I do is to remind folks in the United Nations that are negotiating plastics treaties, an international one to reduce plastic treaties. And I'm part of the Indigenous Peoples Caucus and bearing witness to the start point, and that's the tar sands of plastic production, and hearing from other Indigenous people in the Arctic North, in the polar region, in Rapa Nui, in New Zealand, with the plastic pollution that is washing up on shores, that has become part of our bodies. Indigenous people are the frontline communities. We're the fence line communities. Indigenous and Black people are who are affected first. It's been our bodies who've been impacted by the climate changes. And we have been bearing witness to the climate changes since forestry started here, and your ancestors began cutting down our relatives that were the trees, that was the logging. You know, nothing's been the same. Our landscape has never been the same since contact, because all of the so-called natural resources, which are relatives, were mined. They were cut down. They were logged, clear cut. Lands were clear cut. And we have folks now that talk about save old growth forests. I don't know where those old growth forests in Ontario are, because they certainly aren't where I live. So when we talk about a green transition, I can see that it's already not happening. And folks who were here last week supporting Grassy Narrows and Justice for Grassy Narrows and the Justice for Mercury, your support is still needed, because now they're fighting nuclear waste, you know, the deep geological repositories where they want to put nuclear waste because nuclear is being greenwashed as clean energy. Then there's also the mining and the ring of fire up there. So, I mean, mercury is only one thing on the step of many, many Indigenous rights violations. And that's what's going to happen during this clean transition unless folks get behind, you know, Indigenous people who carry that traditional knowledge, who know their lands, who know their territories, who knows how the water works, who knows the underground water system, who knows their land because it's been passed on from generation to generation. Those are the folks you need to get behind. Traditional knowledge holders. We need your help to lift Indigenous knowledge up to equal Western science, because it is equal. We know that because it's only catching up now. So that's, we need you to help get behind Indigenous rights is the path forward to a just transition and to a just future. We have been left out of all of these conversations as the natural world that we depend on has been monetized. Everything's been monetized right up to the clean and dirty polluted air. Everything's been monetized and we've been left out of every single one of these processes and every single one of these conversations. So the path forward is you folks helping us raise that Indigenous knowledge as Western science. It's just as valid as Western science, and I'll never stop saying it. We see it now. We have communities that are transitioning because they've witnessed the plant life is changing. We're watching the changes happen on the land right now. I live in a community that's directly impacted. We used to have an ice road out on Georgian Bay. We don't have an ice road anymore. We can no longer just get back and forth to the mainland. We get stranded over on our island when there is some ice, but not enough to drive on. So, you know, the impacts I feel in my community are phenomenal. Winter fishing is not a thing for us anymore. We're fishing folk and we can't winter fish and have that nice cold fish anymore, you know, because we don't have ice to put our nets under anymore. So like the changes that I've seen in a short period of time is just phenomenal. And the impacts of these storms. I live in the bottom of a funnel. You know, I live at the bottom of a watershed. And while all these extreme storms come and cities dump their sewage, their raw sewage into the water where I live, you know, this is what we're up against. So, I mean, I might have clean water for now, but how long is that going to last? I live in a growing community with an aging water plant that's impacted by the wastewater from the surrounding towns and communities that we live at. So, you know, I appreciate having your time in your ear today. I want you to understand that Indigenous people have lived through multiple climate changes, and we're going to live through another one because we're going to follow our ways and we're going to reclaim our knowledge and reclaim our tradition and our language and our relationship with nature. We're not outside of nature. The more people understand that we are not outside of nature and we're not in control of nature, the more we're going to advance humankind. You know, it's community. We need to understand how to be community again. And we have turned into these individual silos of people and private property rights. And that's not what community looks like. Right now, this is what community looks like. Yeah. And I believe in all of us. I believe in all of you who organized this today, Seniors Against Climate or Seniors for Climate Action, for all the young people who showed up today, for everyone who came today. I appreciate you. And I believe that we're going to make significant changes. I'm all willing to do a lot of radical stuff. I just don't have anybody to do it with. So I'm all down for shutting down things. But so I don't want to take up too much time. I know we're a little late starting, but you can find me on Facebook. My name is Tori Kress. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Wata Sweetnish. And I invite you to really get behind Indigenous rights and follow folks, like see what more you can do with Grassy Narrows. There's more. They're not done. They're fighting nuclear. Find out about that. Find out more about Indigenous communities fighting for justice from historic injustices and the ones that are up and coming, because they're all up and coming. They're all up and coming. I see it now on my way here, Highway 413, a greenwash project. Yeah, the water at Meaford at that army plant where they're going to greenwash water. They're going to take millions of liters of water out of Georgian Bay, put it in this big holding tank, and then 24 hours, they're going to drop it down into a turbine that's going to shoot the water out towards the island that I live on. And then that's to provide some energy for Barrie. You know, like, so yeah. And one of the things about the government tricks with the Indigenous rights is they will only consult the closest community to the project. So even though we're directly impacted by the water flow, our community hasn't been consulted and there's nothing we can do. We have been shouting to fight this project, but they already consulted Saugeen and they're just going by who's closest by on land, even though that project, I can see it from where I live. So the greenwashing is real. Okay. That's interpolitical, and that's one I'm definitely not going to answer. But I'll stick with what I just told you. I'm not going to knock other First Nation communities for anything. Yeah, out of respect, I'm not going to say anything about Saugeen's decisions. So I'm just going to move forward on that one. And I want to thank you all for your time. And again, there's Indigenous rights projects happening across this country that are fighting and standing up. You don't have to look far to find folks who are fighting for clean land and clean water. Indigenous right is our path forward. Miigwech.
Thank you, Tori. When Tori was talking about that water turbine in Meaford, it's the first time I've heard about it, but kind of reminded me of building a tunnel from Markham to our next speaker is David Phillips. He's a senior climatologist with Environment and Climate Change Canada. He has worked with Environment Canada's Weather Service for over 55 years. David?
Well, thank you, Helen, very much. And what an honor it is for me to participate in the Seniors for Climate movement. You know, I've been a climatologist all my professional career, and I can remember a time when the climate was considered to be still and static and dependable. You know, summers were hot and winters were cold. When 100-year storms occurred in every 100 years, a time when weather was maybe not more predictable, but at least it seemed more manageable and sort of more foreseeable. Fewer surprises. For me, the real change began about 3 years ago, when climate change began to attack Canada from all directions and killing hundreds and turning neighborhoods into wastelands. It scared Canadians, who largely changed their thinking from doubters to converts. Prior to 2021, climate change was largely an Arctic phenomenon, you know, with images of floating ice and azure blue water and melting permafrost and calving ice caps with gigantic icebergs crashing into the sea and skinny polar bears rummaging through community garbage dumps. In 2021, there were new horrific images of climate change in the provinces. Body bags being shoved into refrigerated trucks because there were not enough coffins made. Polluted skies that you could smell but also feel and taste the ash. And atmospheric rivers that just flowed wherever they wanted to flow. That is what climate change looks like now, and it isn't pretty. It was a wake-up call for Canadians, for all Canadians. And no Canadian was left untouched or immune from weather extremes and climate disasters. It's an urban-rural, it's a province territory, it's a north-south issue. Canadians remember a time when natural disasters seemed to occur on the other side of a planet, to a society different than ours. It was not just, though, now in Bangladesh and Botswana and Bolivia. It is happening in Burlington and Brandon and Burnaby. What also has struck me over the last few years have been the number of evacuations of Canadians. Last year, 2023, 250,000 Canadians left their homes because of fires and floods. And in some communities, 2 or 3 times during the year. I've never been evacuated. I don't know what the anguish and the horror is to leave your home and wondering if your possessions or your property are going to be intact when you return, maybe from 2,000 kilometers away, as the residents of Yellowknife happened to them when they were flown to Winnipeg. The evidence couldn't be any clearer and more certain that human-induced climate warming is making extreme weather more extreme. Rare events are becoming more frequent. Exceptional is becoming the ordinary. And to think all of this self-inflicted misery, because the earth has warmed up by 1.5 or 1.25 degrees in the last 130 years. And what will it be like in 30 years when we warm up by 3 degrees? It's scary. There's a lot of doom and gloom about the future. We're constantly being bombarded with bad news about the existential threat to planet Earth and humankind. The climate crisis has begun to affect our health, the mental health, especially of young people. I mean, polls have said that 70% of young people 16 to 25 are frightened about the future. More than a third question whether they'll ever grow up and go to college or have children in a world facing a climate crisis. And scaring the pants off us doesn't move us forward. People need hope. And there are several things that give me hope. First, there's an overwhelming consensus amongst scientists. You can't get scientists to agree on anything, but 98% of scientists believe that the world is warming up faster and greater now than it ever has, and human DNA is all over it. Climate change science is solid and strong. We know today what we knew 30 years ago. Moreover, there's no convincing alternative explanation. No compelling theory for the warming climate other than human activities. So we also know what is causing climate change. It's not that an asteroid has hit the planet. We don't have to send space mission to Venus to turn down the thermostat. It's not a hot sun, it's us. It's coming out of our tailpipes and smokestacks. Moreover, we know what the cure is. We know what the solutions are. What is missing is the will. Another hopeful sign to me is the fact that science deniers and skeptics and contrarians have largely been marginalized or quieted. Deniers can no longer say that climate change didn't cause some of that weather extreme or disaster. That's an incredible breakthrough in the attribution of science of climate change. What also gives me hope is that the climate change has become part of our public conversation, part of the nightly news wheel, every day across the country. A multitude of media platforms, a lot of respected journalists are citing convincing evidence every day of the ubiquity of human involvement in climate change. Polling in the last few years has said in Canada that a vast majority of Canadians, yes, they're worried about climate change, but they also see climate change as being not just a natural or cyclical phenomenon. It is human beings that are involved. 3/4 of Canadians believe that extreme weather events are linked to climate change. That's a big change that I've seen. And optimistically, I think people are probably maybe more than I am. Half the Canadians polled think that there's time to reverse the consequences of climate change. Another reason for hope for me is the commitment and action of young people. Young voices are becoming louder and stronger and more frequent. I think it's suicidal for politicians to ignore these voices of these voters or to-be voters. Another hopeful sign, I think, is what we've seen from changes from climate policies globally. It's been slow, but I see some hope there that these policies are are actually affecting change. And even some of the clean air technology is unstoppable. So I get hope from that. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, let me say, I think there's a lot of positive things happening. Unfortunately, we didn't start fast enough and widespread enough to prevent a crisis. So a lot of catch up is needed. Climate change is, in fact, the defining issue of our time. And what I don't want to hear ever again is seniors saying that climate change, oh, I'm not concerned. I'll be safely dead before that begin bite deep and hard. No, climate change is real. It's not fake news. It's a present day danger, not a futuristic threat. It's affecting people, not just polar bear, and it's happening in your neighborhood, not just on the other side of the world. The time for talking is over. The time for action is now. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'm not a pessimist. I'm not an optimist. I am an activist like everybody here. Ken Whiteley has been called a roots music master and has performed in concerts and at major folk and blues festivals throughout North America. He has won many awards for his over 30 recordings and prodigious songwriting, but most importantly, values bringing people together through the power of song to try and make the world a better place. Ken?
You know, I was trying to this part. No, I was trying to think of how we could reach the people who sort of seem to be sleepwalking through this. And I thought, you know, you can't yell at them, although that sometimes is what we feel is the appropriate response. But, you know, if you want to actually try and convince them, I thought, you know, it has to be kind of non-threatening. So I thought the ukulele is the most non-threatening instrument I own. And I composed this song that I hope you'll help me sing. And it says, greed is a flawed organizing principle. Do you want to try that with me? Greed is a flawed organizing principle. Then we'll sing it again. Greed is a flawed organizing principle for you and me, for society. Okay, let's try it together. Greed is a flawed organizing principle. Greed is a flawed organizing principle for you and me, for you and me, for society. When profit motive is sacrosanct, think the power of business, the power of banks. How can well-being take second place? What about the future we all face? Greed is a flawed organizing principle. Greed is a flawed organizing principle for you and me, for society. Let's consider our options here. What about life? Do we really hold dear? If we have to choose between the planet and plastic, it might be time to do something drastic. Oh, greed is a flawed organizing principle. Greed is a flawed organizing principle for you and me, for society. Well, I shouldn't have to tell you about the rising seas, species extinction, importance of the bees. We've changed this planet in so many ways. If we don't change ourselves, you can number our days. Greed is a flawed organizing principle. Greed is a flawed organizing principle for you and me, for society. One last time so they can hear it at Queen's Park. Greed is a flawed organizing principle. This has a pretty simple chorus. I think you'll get your mouth around it pretty easily. It's called "Give Your Hands to Struggle." Well, if you see me stumble, don't just stand and look on. Reach on out now, brothers. Give your hands to struggle. And if you hear my heart break, don't just count the sound wave. Reach on out now, sisters. Give your hands to struggle. 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 Try that with me now. Let me hear you. Give your hands to struggle. 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 And if you hear my song, don't just stand and look on. Raise your voice and sing along. Give your hands to struggle. And we'll we'll be moving. When we all give our hands to struggle. One more time, give your hands to struggle. Give your hands to struggle. Give your hands to struggle. Give your hands to struggle.
Doug Ford isn't the only politician I hope heard that. Thanks, Ken. Before I introduce the next speaker, and she'll be finishing the first half of our our event today, I wanted to go through some of the other places across Canada that are also having climate action days. Later today in Whitehorse, there's a march from City Hall to the Yukon Legislature. In Yellowknife, there's a potluck at the Baker Center to talk about climate change. On Salt Spring Island, there are 2 presentations on climate change and a sing-along with Valdi featuring his new song. In Athabasca, the Senior Society has a Seniors Talk Climate gathering. In Saskatchewan, a statement of concern with signatures has been published in Saskatchewan's largest newspapers. In the Forks, Manitoba, there's a Climate Action Expo with over 20 exhibits and opportunity for discussion with concerned seniors. In London, later this afternoon, there's an intergenerational walk and talk with climatologist Dr. Gordon McBean. In Quebec, there were rallies across the province on September 27th called For the Future of the World to demand government action to address climate change. Seniors for Climate subscribers were asked to identify themselves at these rallies. In Moncton earlier today, there was a rocking seniors action at the New Brunswick Legislature. Yes, with rocking chairs. At the Lewisdale Lions Club in Cape Breton, there was a municipality proclamation followed by a presentation with the Retirement in Action group. In Charlottetown at Trinity United Church, there's a harvest soup with speaker Emily Vandersteen, the Government of Prince Edward Islands Adaptation Coordinator, Environment, Energy, and Climate Action. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, last Saturday, there was tabling at the St. John's Farmers Market to ask people to join Seniors for Climate. Our next speaker is Amy Mann. She's a 4th-year student at the University of Toronto, interested in the intersection of health and climate change. She is an organizer with Climate Justice U of T.
Thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you today. It's really like an honor to be in solidarity with you seniors who have fought for much longer than I've been alive for climate justice, and we're really it's really an honor to be with you guys. And we're here, of course, because the fight's not over. And the fight for our planet and for the climate is really at a critical moment right now. I first got involved with divestment work when I came to the University of Toronto. And divestment at U of T was a very, very long, winding journey that started long before I was a student. And so in the early 2010s, a lot of U of T students came together along with community groups to push U of T to commit to divestment. And so eventually, after a lot of pressure, U of T appointed a committee to study the issue. Um, yeah, and so those students really made the argument that divestment's not just a finances issue. It's really about fundamentally recognizing fossil fuel investments as they are, which is that they're dying and they're destructive. And so the committee came back and they said these people are kind of right and they have a point. And then the university put out its decision, which was to not divest. And in particular to go beyond divestment. So, and so then after 2016, there were new students that came along and they kind of continued this fight. And then eventually in 2021, when I was a first year, U of T announced it would divest from fossil fuels. Yeah. Which I think really shows that when we're persistent, eventually we do win. And that wasn't the end there either, though, because U of T has a very complicated structure, and so they also have a bunch of federated colleges. So they have Victoria College, they have Trinity College, they have St. Mike's colleges, who handle their own endowments. And so at Climate Justice U of T, and this is like I think where I started being involved, we came together to get the other federated colleges to kind of align their investments with their like purported values and to take seriously the climate crisis. And for us, that really started, but doesn't end with divestment. So in April of 2022, we occupied Victoria College for 18 days. Yeah. To demand investment. And for us, I think it wasn't just about the particularities of like fossil fuel investments, but it was also just about like taking really like a bold stand and showing that students are concerned about climate change, and that we had community support and that other students would come out and community members would support us. And I think that we sent like a very clear message. But that didn't happen in isolation. And we received a lot of support and donations and food and just time from community members, including the senior community. So I really wanted to like acknowledge you guys and thank you guys for all your efforts. And for me personally, the community support really like reminded me like how like not alone I am and that it really is all of us and that climate justice really is an intergenerational fight. And it was learning from you guys and the other seniors and climate organizers and Indigenous activists in the community that really got me involved in the movement. And we know that climate change exacerbates all of these inequalities and that it hurts most the people who are already marginalized and are facing the brunt of a crisis that they didn't create. And that's why it's been so incredible to see other young people in Ontario taking Doug Ford to court over climate change. Yeah. And we've seen these kind of court cases in the States as well. And we've also seen cases where young people have won. And I think victories like these show that not just can youth voices matter, but everything we do can change the course of history. We just have to be persistent. And I think we often talk about the future, but I think it's good too to talk about the present because we know that climate change is not a futuristic concern. Climate change is a right now concern. And we've already seen how it's hurt people with chronic health issues, that we had those terrible smoke events. And we've seen how health issues are worsened by air pollution And we also know that when there's an extreme weather event that happens, it's people who have mobility issues who can have trouble evacuating because of floods. And so we know that it's a right now problem, and we know that it's falling on the people who did the least to create it. But I guess to end on a hopeful note, because I think there is a lot to feel hopeful about right now. I feel so incredibly hopeful today being with all of you. And I think we talk a lot about young people, as I have in this. Climate change really is an intergenerational problem, and it's one that we are all part of, and it's a solution that we're all part of. And so the road ahead is definitely not easy. We have a lot of powerful interests, and we have fossil fuel companies, and we have governments who are very slow to act. But we also have something incredibly powerful that I see today, which is our solidarity, the courage, and a belief that we can have a better world. So today on Seniors Climate Action Day, I ask everyone online or in person to join us, and let's demand change, and let's push these boundaries together. And I think there's too much at stake for us to do anything else. Thank you so much.
When I was Amy's age, we had tech geeks, and I mean this in the most loving way, Amy. Climate geeks. I think Tori and Amy has showed us that the path forward is with Indigenous peoples and youth. Okay, we're going to take a 15-minute pause now. Please take this time to meet your neighbors, check the info tables at the back, read the proclamation, get some water and stretch. We're coming back with more great speakers and more music.
On Christmas Eve, 1968, astronaut Bill Anders snapped a photo of the Earth as Apollo 8 orbited the moon. Those three guys were surprised to see from their eyes what a planet looked like an Earthrise, a blue orb hovering over the moon's gray horizon with deep oceans and silver skies. It was our world's first glance at itself, our first chance to see a shared reality, a declared stance, and a commonality, a glimpse into our planet's mirror. And as threats drew nearer, our own urgency became clearer as we realized that we hold nothing dearer than this floating body we all call home. We've known that we're caught in the throes of climactic changes some say will just go away, while some simply pray to survive another day. For it is the obscure, the oppressed, the poor who, when the disaster is declared done, still suffer more than anyone. Climate change is the single greatest challenge of our time. Of this, you're certainly aware. It's saddening, but I cannot spare you from knowing an inconvenient fact, because it's getting the facts straight that gets us to act and not to wait. So I tell you this not to scare you, but to prepare you, to dare you to dream a different reality where, despite disparities, we all care to protect this world, this riddled blue marvel, this little true marvel, to master the verve and the nerve to see how we can serve our planet. You don't need to be a politician to make it your mission to conserve, to protect, to preserve that one and only home that is ours. To use your unique power to give next generations the planet they deserve. We are demonstrating, creating, advocating. We heed this inconvenient truth because we need to be anything but lenient with the future of our youth. And while this is a training in sustaining the future of our planet, there is no rehearsal. The time is now, because the reversal of harm and protection of a future so universal should be anything but controversial. So, Earth, pale blue dots, we will fail you not, just as we chose to go to the moon. We know it's never too soon to choose hope. We choose to do more than cope with climate change. We choose to end it. We refuse to lose. We do this and more, not because it's very easy or nice, but because it is necessary. Because with every dawn, we carry the weight of the fates of this celestial body orbiting a star. And as heavy as that weight sounded, it doesn't hold us down, but it keeps us grounded, steady, ready, because an environmental movement of this size is simply another form of an Earthrise. To see it, close your eyes, visualize that all of us in this room and outside of these walls or in these halls, all of us change makers, or in a spacecraft floating like a silver raft in space, and we see the face of a planet anew. We relish the view, we witness its round green and brilliant blue, which inspires us to ask deeply, wholly, what can we do? Open your eyes, know the future of this wise planet is right in sight, right in all of us. Trust this earth uprising, all of us bring light to exciting solutions never tried before, for it is our hope that implores us at our uncompromising core to keep rising up for an earth more than worth fighting for.
The world we elders are leaving to our grandchildren is radically different from the one that we inherited when we were children. We need a revolution in the way that we see the world, in our economy, in our political system, in our legal system.
It's very, very important for seniors to act. We number 10.5 million in Canada, and that converts to 1 out of every 3 voters. We have motivation, we have the economic power, we have the knowledge, and I think we can be a very strong political force.
From the personal to the local to the regional to the national, we all know people who are being affected by extreme events. So we are delaying action. Fossil fuel industry is very powerful. I'm very concerned and fearful of the power that they have and the power of delay.
We are running out of time. We are experiencing more and more of these extreme events. There is a greater and greater degree of climate injustice.
Disasters are happening to millions of people around the world. We've only got one home, and the home needs to be safe and secure for every living thing.
I really want the world to be one that's organized around caring. And what that means is caring for each other, caring for the planet.
What I want politicians to do to end fossil fuel use is to, number one, end subsidies to fossil fuels. I want them to stop giving my tax dollars to fossil fuel corporations.
The first thing to do is to begin with a cap on emissions. I am wearing this hat every chance I get to remind people that if we don't cap emissions as a first step, then we're on the wrong path.
I feel that solutions are not being implemented fast enough. We've got plans that say we're going to do certain things by 2030. That's only 5.5 years away. You know, what are we doing? Why aren't we acting faster?
What I want to do is invite seniors to get involved and then figure out what is stopping them from getting involved in the fight against the climate emergency.
I have to do that for the sake of my children and grandchildren, for the reality that they could face.
We are heading along a very dangerous path. There are huge opportunities if we shift and begin to live in a different way.
I hope other seniors will join us in this movement. We do have a voice.
To mobilize seniors and to let legislators know that when it comes time to vote, we're going to be voting for legislators who have the same mindset as we do about the climate.
The power of seniors, to me, is that we don't have a vested interest in the status quo. We've got to work together and transform our impact on the world that we live in.
Our main message is that we want to leave our children and our grandchildren a better world.
All levels of government have to act in order to cut our carbon emissions. They need to stop subsidizing the fossil fuel industry.
Find out what you can do. Everybody keeps saying, climate change is a problem. What can I do? Well, come and find out. You need to act now.
Listen up, seniors. Here's a message from us to our elected MPs. Every woman and man, we have taken a stand. And here's what we demand. Stop the subsidies. Fund the people. Stop the subsidies and fund the people. We could wring our hands and cry, as so many people try, but it's proven ineffective in the long run. We could beat around the bush, as so many people do, but that method's proved not to be a strong one. At the risk of being annoying, I'll get right to the point. Stop the subsidies, fund the people. Stop the subsidies and fund the people. It's big oil companies who've been running this game. They've been running it for gain and forever. They shake all the right hands, they're a mighty foe. But we can make this work by working together. It's our votes that you're courting, and if you want our support, stop the subsidies, fund the people. Stop the subsidies, fund the people. Stop the subsidies, fund the people. Stop the subsidies, fund the people.
Hi, I'm Murray McLaughlin, and I'm here at one of Canada's many beautiful lakes. We're blessed in Canada with a priceless natural environment, but it is changing. Climate change is real. Let's do all we can today and in all the days to come to prevent it. Later, it's too late.
Mary, what on earth are you doing with all that stuff?
Climate change, Maud. We've got to be prepared. Heat domes. Floods. Fires. Oh, I'm too tired to go for our walk now.
Nonsense. You shouldn't have to lug all this stuff around.
We're on our own, Maud. The government's moving too slowly. And that guy who wants to be prime minister hasn't even got a plan. He just keeps chanting.
Oh, don't say it.
I went to Edmonton last month to visit my granddaughter, and we couldn't even go outside because of the wildfire smoke.
You know, Seniors' Day is coming up on October 1st.
So, it's just another Hallmark holiday.
Not this year. This time, seniors groups all across the country are being asked to make some noise. It's called Seniors for Climate.
So, what are we supposed to do?
Anything that'll send a message to politicians, corporations.
Banks.
That we need action now. Later is too late. That's the slogan.
Well, There are a lot of us. And we do vote.
Exactly. The more seniors that get involved, the better.
I've always wanted to be part of a flash mob.
In front of our MP's office?
Staying alive.
Staying alive.
Staying alive. Staying alive. Staying alive.
What I want to do is invite seniors to get involved, come out to the October 1st National Seniors Day of Climate events, and then figure out what is stopping them from getting involved in the fight against the climate emergency.
The power of seniors is that we don't have a vested interest in the status quo. We've got to work together.
On October 1st, there are climate events happening right across the country that will answer your question of what can I do? There'll be all kinds of folks here that will give you solutions.
On October 1st, I hope seniors will have checked the map on our website, which is seniorsforclimate.org, and it shows 55 locations across Canada where there will be an action or an event. And I'd like seniors to check that map and join a local action or the one closest to where they live. And if not, I hope on October 1st they will have their own action going on.
The world we elders are leaving to our grandchildren is radically different from the one that we inherited when we were children.
Everybody keeps saying, climate change is a problem. What can I do? Well, come and find out. You need to act now.
Hi folks, Seth Klein with the Climate Emergency Unit and author of A Good War, Mobilizing Canada for the Climate Emergency. The disconnect has never been greater between these extreme weather events and summers of record temperatures and our politics. But we've got provincial elections happening this fall in a number of provinces. We will have a federal election this year. Now's the time to make our voices heard. The Seniors for Climate Action Day of Action is happening across the country on October 1st. There's almost 70 events already on the map happening across the country. Come on out. Hope to see you there.
If somebody says they don't believe in climate change,
Hi, folks, let's get started. I'd like to start with just a couple of announcements before we get into our speakers. The first is we've been asked to remind people to please wear their masks. The speakers don't have their masks on in general, but please wear your masks. And I'd like to start with another list. And because some of you are here because of a group you belong to has endorsed this event. We have endorsements from the following organizations: Artists for Real Climate Action, Climate Fast, CUPE Ontario, Elementary Teachers of Toronto, the Greater Toronto Health Coalition, MPP for Toronto St. Paul's riding Jill Andrew, the Oakwood Vaughan Community Organization, Toronto and York Region Labour Council, Toronto East End Residents for Renewable Energy, the United Jewish People's Order, and the United Steelworkers Toronto Area Council. We also want to say thank you to the people and organizations that amplified our messages on Facebook and Instagram to bring awareness to our Day of Action. Okay. So our second part of the program begins with a group of women who have embraced aging by getting off their rocking chairs and singing out for peace, social justice, and the environment. Please welcome the Raging Grannies.
I just want to say briefly before we start that most of you know, I can't hear me. Want to say briefly before we start that you probably know that the Raging Grannies take familiar tunes and write new lyrics to promote a cause. And today it's the environment, but we promote many causes with our songs. The Raging Grannies started some 30 years ago in Victoria. And they spread across the continent. And we want to give credit today for the two songs that we're singing. The first one was, the lyrics were written by the Seattle Raging Grannies, and the second one by the Eugene, Oregon Grannies. But we have Raging Granny groups across the country composing songs for every cause that comes along. And we rage on. Hope you enjoy. Yeah. Oh, we're radical environmentalists. Yes, we're radical environmentalists. We like clean air, clean water, beaches in good order. Oh, we're radical environmentalists. Oh, we don't like energy from fossil fuels. Oh, no. And we know that fracking kills, we ain't no fools.
And we rather see those windmills roar than nuclear plant on our Northern shore. We're radical environmentalists. We've seen fracking in our time, but we'll stand against the trend. We don't want their gas and oil mucking up our water and soil. We're radical environmentalists. Yeah, we're radical environmentalists. When people mess with Mother, it makes us pissed. So get out and tell the others that the earth is still our mother. And we'll all be true environmentalists. Nice and slow.
Rage to save the world. We're the raging grannies, and we're here to speak our minds about the threat of climate change. It's everywhere we find. We act because we must to deserve our children's trust. We rage to save the world. No more drilling, no more fracking. Time for action, not just yakking. We left our rocking chairs to show the children we care. We rage to save the world. Fertile farms are dying up and on ground, while bureaucrats and business people simply stand around. We have to tell our government to keep it in the ground. We rage to save the world. No more drilling, no more fracking. Time for action, not just yakking. We've left our rocking chairs to show the children we care. We rage to save the world. They tell us the economy depends on fossil fuels, but the future of our planet is not looking very cool. We may be like fossils, but we are not fossil fuels. We rage to save the world. No more drilling, no more fracking. Time for action, not just yakking. We left our rocking chair to show the children care. We rage to save the world. I think so. Thank you so much. Thank you.
They had hats on. Thank you. Lillian Allen is a professor at OCAD University and Poet Laureate of Toronto. An arts and social activist, she is a leading international exponent and innovator of dub poetry. Her forthcoming publication is off the charts interdisciplinary poetry collaboration, Muttertongue, with Gary Barwin and Gregory Bates. Lillian Allen.
Thank you. I bring you my words, and on behalf of all the poets in Toronto, a stoic watchfulness, rumbling flashes of thunder solidified and stilled, older than dearth, air and wood, plant matter, the comfort to be clothed with greens of cedar and a crystal clear blue of a deepening sky. Could this be the center of healing, diffused in laughter, in fullness? We pay homage to our celestial guidance, our ancestral longings for peace, peace, peace. A peace that is justice. A peace of being whole, of all that is given up, all that we have given our labor to, struggle, the labor of struggle, a dreaming, never ceasing, but threatens to pull us under sometimes, but always, always, community will carry us over. We rest on the backbone of this land, this our land, oh, Mother Earth, her vertebrae steadying our feet, our right to exist. Our right to exist in equality, unrepentant, our right to exist in peace. In fullness, cosmic trails of heartbeats become the drum, a wearying numbness, cabling on demand, network, television, digital dictatorship, so loud it squints and blurs the mind sight. Falsification is an evil, a non-spirit born of the transactional world. Extraction, extraction. Yet no one can hear the sound of truth when it dies, even when you turn the volume up high. Lest we forget the chemistry and the physics and then organically interconnectedness of things beyond meta, beyond interneta, beyond X, beyond anything that is created or destroyed. The arc of justice hovers over the universe. Poetic are the voices. Jazz thrills, artists, musicians, injustice resistors, lovers of the land, forging a new language of the uncomplacent heart. Zoop, 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 and a new vision. The new imperative of creativity, a journey out of the abyss, rift, escaping the black hole, artists rendering visible, invisible freedoms, turning. Franz Fanon says each generation must discover its mission and will fulfill or betray it. We shall fulfill ours. Yet corporate symbiosis and false cosmological contraptions fill our spaces. Our intuitive reaching, our faith, Hold on, stolen lives, stolen land. Fate is but vision for the oppressed, clawing through the hell and hellishness. This near and distant reality, unreal. How did we get here? Justice, please, not corporate justification. Blue, baga, blue, 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 blue. The dictatorship of capital. Boo, boo, boo. Boo, 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 over people and community. Production of capital is king as male and white supremacists. A mean non-spirit. War is not the answer, neither is it the question. This is coloration, an omniscient intrusion, breathing into our very dreams, stars, when I yet colonize whole space for our secret divinations. We will decolonize the indecent sprawl, subversive desires twinkling, linking, keeping we together through the darkest of times. Although some lives already is a nightmare, as Linton Kwesi would say, for which no poetry or metaphor can compare. Through modern disparities, we message each other across time, remembering that we are this planet, this mother, twinkling incessantly, circling incessantly, building community incessantly, reaching incessantly. Back from the forward future, bend the art that have us. We are now. We are thus. We are here. We are the land and the light. We are the percussive movement of air. The sentient singing connections of being, the breathing of rocks. We're the water before and the after. Our voices between spaces. Listen for the secret code of revolution, DNA of trees. Pimawachian Aki, Pimachian Aki, Pimachian Aki. Listen, holy. Our universe is recentering. Open the portal, reach back. And from the future, agency, urgency, insurgency, agency, urgency, insurgency. Thank you.
Here is a grandfather you all know. He knows a thing or two about the climate crisis. David Suzuki.
Thank you. Thank you. What a joy for my wife Tara and I to be here to take part in this wonderful event. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share a few ideas with you. I'm delighted to have the youth here so strongly and contributing, but I'll tell you, I feel humiliated that young people have to show the kind of leadership they are now. That this shouldn't be what they have to do. That's our job to look out for their future. It's so great to be here with a group of elders. This is the most important part of our lives. We've lived an entire life. We've learned a lot. Those lessons have been hard won for many of us, but now this is our opportunity to share what we've learned with the coming generations. And we're at this position where we no longer have to worry about being polite and not offending, because we're looking for a job. We're not looking for a raise or a promotion, and we're no longer driven by lust or, a drive for fame or money or power. We can speak the truth now, the way retired admirals and generals against nuclear war did so effectively. So I tell other elders, get off the golf course, get off the couch. Let's get on with the most important part of our lives, to be here at events like this. We all look at the world through the lenses of our area, our professions, the areas that we work in. If you're in business, if you're a politician, if you're a lawyer, you see the world through the lenses of those disciplines. Well, I'm a biologist, and I look at the world through the lens of biology and the driving force of evolution. And today, scientists are able to take DNA, the genetic material, and trace the movement of human beings across the planet over time. And if you then follow backwards along those trails, all of the trails of humanity lead back to Africa 150,000 years ago. That was our birthplace. I'm still waiting for the Ku Klux Klan to invite me to talk so I can tell them, we're all Africans, for God's sake. What's your problem? Try to imagine what Africa was like when our species was born. Those grasslands were filled with animals and plants in abundance and diversity beyond anything that you could see in the Serengeti today. And if we were able to take a time machine and go back and look over the great grasslands, we'd have to look really hard to see these little clusters of 3, 4, or 5 of those funny looking furless apes. That was us. And seen in that context, we were not a very impressive animal. I mean, there weren't many of us. We weren't very big, strong, fast. And look at how many of us are wearing glasses. I mean, we wouldn't have lasted there very long, because our secret, the secret of our great success, was hidden. It was a 1.5 kilogram organ buried deep in our skulls. The human brain was our strategy for survival. It endowed us with tremendous curiosity. We were observant. We were inventive, and we had a massive memory. No other animal has a memory of a human being. And we invented a notion of a future. Future doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is now and what we can remember from the past. But because we invented the idea of a future, we are the only animal that realized we can shape the future by what we do in the present. First it's simple. You're walking along a path, it branches, and you go, oh yeah, Dad went to the right and he almost got killed by a saber-toothed tiger, but Mom went to the left and found something good to eat, so I'm going left. Foresight was absolutely critical in the path to our survival. And that importance of foresight, we tell in stories over and over again. The story of Joseph, the boy with the coat of many colors, he could read dreams and he forecast a famine and told the Pharaoh, save rain because there's a famine coming. Noah, he's just a carpenter, and a voice says, build an ark. He says, I'm just a carpenter. Build an ark. The flood is coming. And in Indigenous people all over the world, the notion of 7 generations, remembering back on 7 generations of our ancestors to guide us into the future of 7 generations of our children. That kind of perspective from foresight. And today, we have all of the amplified foresight of scientists with supercomputers. In 1992, over half of all living Nobel Prize winners signed a document called World Scientists' Warning to Humanity. and it began. Human beings and the natural world are on a collision course. Human activities inflict harsh and irreversible damage on the environment, on critical resources. If not checked, many of our current practices put at serious risk the future we wish for human society, and may so alter the living world, it will be unable to sustain life in the manner that we know. 1992, that document came out in anticipation of the Earth Summit in Rio, but we didn't pay attention to it. So that in 2017, 25 years later, 16,000 scientists signed World Scientists Warning to Humanity #2, warning that all of the signs, the evidence is very, very real, that we are in a very great danger of undermining. Now, people talk about the world, worrying about the world or the planet. The planet is not in trouble. We're not that powerful that we're going to determine the fate of the planet. What has happened is the planet has become less hospitable for animals like us. Last week, I attended the announcement of the latest report by Johann Rockström, a scientist who heads the Potsdam Institute in Berlin, in which he tells us about the state of the 9 planetary boundaries within which any animal must live, within the boundaries prescribed by the biosphere for that make our survival possible. These 9 boundaries that we must not exceed include the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, the state of fresh water, the pH of the oceans, the phosphorus cycle, the nitrogen cycle. There are 9 of these boundaries that we must not pass if we are to live in a sustainable manner. We have already passed 6 of those 9 boundaries and are about to pass the 7th boundary. So we are in the area around the green, they draw it as a green area of the sustainable 9 areas. And the zone outside that is a red zone called highly dangerous zone. So we're in the danger zone for 6, soon to be 7 of those boundaries. Beyond that boundary is chaos and, without question, probably an unlivable biosphere for an animal like us. So, and as was mentioned earlier at the earlier part of this rally by one of the young people there, we've been given 5 years. I find it hard to believe we have 5 years, but we've been given 5 years to get out of this danger zone back into the safe zone. So, I guess depending on whether you're an optimist or a pessimist, 5 years can be either a lot of time or not a hell of a lot of time. But why is it? Tara and I have been involved in battles now since the 1960s. After Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, we've been swept up in the environmental movement, and we've celebrated many victories. We celebrated the stop of the dam proposed at Site C on the Peace River in British Columbia. We got very involved with the Kaipo people in Brazil, and we stopped a dam at Altamira. And there was a proposal back in the 1970s to drill for oil off Anwar, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and we stopped them. Today, 30 to 40 years after what we celebrated as victories, each of these projects that we thought we stopped is now on the agenda. Last night, Tara and I were horrified to see the national report that the dam at Site C now is ready to be opened. And the dam at Altamira, we stopped the dam in Brazil because the World Bank was offering a $500 million loan to build the dam. But the Brazilian government said in the 2010s, well, our economy is strong enough, we don't need that. And the dam that we stopped is now about to be opened up. What on earth has happened? The problem is the environmental crisis. These battles that we fought were skirmishes. They didn't get at the underlying root cause of our destructiveness. So we get these temporary victories, but we're back fighting them over and over again. And I believe that the problem is that for 99% of human existence, we lived in a world that we understood a web of relationships, relationships with all other species of animals and plants, with the air, the water, the soil, and photosynthesis capturing the energy from the sun. Earth, air, fire, water, and the web of living things that are our relatives. That's what we understood. And when you live in a web of relationships, there is a reciprocity of the gift you receive from that web. There is a reciprocity of obligation and responsibility. And this is a frightening thing that's happening now. We saw it in Canada with the truckers thing down in Ottawa. The demand for freedom. And Mr. Polyev jumped in there. He's right there for freedom. Freedom without responsibility is not freedom, it's anarchy. This is crazy. So it's the lack of reciprocity in everything we do that is the reminder that we get from Indigenous people who continue to see the world through the perspective of the web of relationships. And we have a tremendous responsibility to, as they say, act in a good way to ensure that nature's continued generosity and abundance can continue to support us. But living today, we no longer see ourselves in a web. And I think I put the blame at the Renaissance. The Renaissance began that period when we elevated the mind. I say the mind was a strategy for survival, very successful. But when René Descartes said, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, he elevated the mind. The mind was everything about our existence and who we are. And Francis Bacon said, scientia potestas est. Knowledge, science is power. And of course, Isaac Newton discovered laws governing the movement of bodies in our solar system. He said, wow, the world, the universe seems to be a giant clockwork mechanism. And we can begin to focus on the parts of that clock. And we can begin to discover how they all work and eventually put them all back together again and understand the whole. That was the beginning of the reductionist promise of understanding the whole. Now, I won't go into all of the modern work that's going on that showed that reduction simply doesn't work. And but the problem is that the Renaissance, I use that because it gives me a chance. I studied Latin for 4 years. Totally useless, but I do get to cite some Latin phrases and show off with that. But the Renaissance then began to elevate the mind as this instrument that represented power, and power to do things that we saw with the Industrial Revolution a few hundred years later. With machines, we could move weights, we could move the top of mountains, we could dive now to the bottom of the oceans. We can live in outer space. We can travel faster than the speed of sound. It seemed like we have now escaped the boundaries dictated by our animal nature, by our biology. And the key was our intelligence enabled us to escape those constraints. And in that frame, then, we changed from seeing ourselves in a web of relationships to a pyramid where we're at the top and everything down below is for us. We're at the center of the action of everything. And even, all these years of running around as environmentalists, we run around and say, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that. But don't worry, we want to stop the tar sands, but there'll be jobs. We'll take care of the workers that are displaced and the economy won't. What the hell? The economy is the driving force of the problem. We had a 10-year period of Mr. Harper saying we can't do anything about climate change. That's crazy economics. So he elevated the economy above the very atmosphere that gives us air to breathe, that gives us weather, climate, and the seasons. And that's what you see now. You're all pissed off at Mr. Ford. Yeah, you should be pissed off. But all the politicians, doesn't matter what party they're in, they have elevated the economy. All they differ in is how we're going to do something to keep that economy growing. We've developed systems to shape, to guide, to constrain human interactions. But guess what? We left nature out. So all of our laws are designed around us. And we think it's a big deal. Quebec recently, a few years ago, gave human rights to a river, the Magpie River. And a number of countries, well, yeah, that's okay. But who the hell do we think we are giving the right to anything in the first place? You know, what about the right of a forest to exist as a community of organisms? What about the right of a mosquito to exist just because it exists? And it's been here a lot longer than we have. What about the right of a river to flow as it has for millennia? And how well do our laws work? Danielle Smith in Alberta is saying what they do with the tar sands, none of our goddamn business. That's an Alberta problem. Wait a minute now. When Chernobyl happened, guess what? It was Swedish scientists that said something's happened over in Ukraine because air doesn't stay within national boundaries. What Alberta does has consequences for everyone on the planet because air is a single entity circulating around the planet and it's in us. We are plugged into that air as well. Whatever we do to the atmosphere is of concern to everyone. But our laws are so human-centric that they don't even recognize that nature is the very foundation of our survival and our well-being. And we've invented this thing called the economy. The economy, or economics, is grounded on the same word as ecology. Ecos is the Greek word for household or domain. Ecology is the study of what keeps the whole domain going. Economics is the management. You know, I would have thought that any economist would say, okay, but before we do that, what are those ecologists saying? Because we don't want anything to do anything that will violate the laws of ecology that let us exist. But we have elevated the economy above those laws. We think we're so smart. We don't need to worry about nature in our economic system. And we've now elevated, the economy then becomes our high priority, and it's built on the creed of cancer. Cancer cells think they can grow forever, long before they're a huge part of our bodies and kill us. And yet economists actually think that the economy can and must grow forever. This is absolute madness, because when we elevate growth as the very measure of progress, nobody asks the important questions. What is an economy? What is the economy based on? What's it for? How much is enough? Are there no limits to economic growth? Does that economy make us happier with all this stuff? We're not asking the really critical questions. It's all about keeping that economy growing. Well, the first thing we got to do with that economy is put the eco back into economics. And the eco is our home, of course. That's what we should be managing everything for. But can you imagine the richest man on the planet? He wants to give up on our home and say, to hell with this, I'm going to Mars. Like, if that isn't an indication that just being rich doesn't make, I mean, if Donald Trump didn't show you that being rich doesn't make you mean you're smart, Elon Musk shows that just being rich doesn't mean you're very intelligent. And our political system that we all look to. We're all yelling to try to influence politicians out there. But, you know, the political system is based on looking ahead to the next election. Right? We need action now that is going to take decades, if not centuries. We need to have political decisions made to act in certain ways. They only think from one election to the next. In British Columbia, not long ago, we prided ourselves in having the first carbon tax in North America. And the NDP opposed it and said, axe the tax. And they lost the election. And now a conservative has come out with the same slogan, axe the tax. It's all politics. It's got nothing to do with the important things that have to be done. We have the best environment minister we've ever had in office right now federally. And yet a year ago, I wrote and told Stephen Guilbeault he must resign. Why? He can't tell us the truth. That we are in an emergency, and all this stuff about a tax incentive here, a tax against that, a new law here, a new park here, those are all incremental things that should have been done ages ago, but they're not enough now because it's an emergency. And we have to take action that reflects the degree of urgency that an emergency gives us. I'm happy he's in there, but he's trapped by these systems. And so unless we get out of that anthropocentric way of seeing the world, how do we get out of that? What's the alternative then? And the fortunate thing is that despite everything we've done, there are still people who see the world through the lenses of being in a web, what we call an ecocentric way. And of course, I'm speaking of Indigenous people around the world. The land defenders everywhere are fighting for the land. Why? Not only is it the definition of who they are, they're fighting for the land so that they can be responsible for caring for that land the way it must be cared for. So we've got Indigenous people, we've got leading scientists, we've got environmentalists. Now what we need to do is transform the systems within which we live. And the Mi'kmaq leader Albert Marshall in the Maritimes says we need two-eyed seeing. We need to see the world through the lens of Indigenous values and the Indigenous perspective to guide the kinds of insights that we gain from the other eye, which is science and technology and so on. But without the Indigenous values and perspective, then we will continue to use the destructive legal, economic, and political systems. And we're here, I believe, as elders to say, yes, we understand that we join with Indigenous people. We provide things and power. We must be the most powerful generation ever. We just have to marshal that power. We may not have the same energy, but that's what the young kids are there for. They'll give us some muscle. And thank you.
Wow. I don't have a summary for that. The thing that kept going through my mind is being older, I no longer have two to give. And you're able to go out and do what needs to be done. Our last speaker, but not our last item for the event, our last speaker is Nick DiCarlo. He's the co-chair of Seniors for Climate Action Now and one of the organizers of this National Day of Action.
Thank you. So I won't be very long. We've heard the challenge. If that wasn't a challenge, I don't know what is. We've heard it from speakers throughout the morning or the afternoon, I guess it is. And so what do we do? And I want to just reflect on that for a minute. In the spring of this year, there were about 20 of us who met a few people from British Columbia, from Alberta, Manitoba, Ontario, and New Brunswick. And we talked about the need to build a seniors movement, seniors across Canada effort, because the potential was there, the need was there, and we had to act. And if we as seniors had to have a way of acting. And so we thought, well, do we build an organization? We discussed, back and forth how it should be done, et cetera. And we decided the best thing to do was to call an action and to organize around that action, see what happens. And that was in the spring of this year. And now we have events at 75 locations across the country. You've heard of some of them, but they're literally in every province and territory across the country. And we've allied with people in Quebec and started to talk about how we can work with them. That's in a short time. But it's only a beginning. It's only a beginning because the task is big. It is huge. We've established that among the senior population, the potential is enormous, but it still has to be organized. It has to be brought to bear. It has to have a direction. It has to have unity. It has to deepen its roots in the community. We have to reach out to other people who don't understand the importance of the situation, other people who don't know what action can be taken, other people who don't even agree. They have to be convinced, because if we don't convince them, we will not succeed. So that's the task ahead, is to build and grow. And we have to do it, as others have mentioned, as an intergenerational project, as a project of seniors joining with others, not just seniors organizing ourselves. That's not good enough. We have to join with others. And we've already seen again in this movement, as much as is at the beginning, we've seen that others have responded. We've seen that there is a role we can play. So looking forward, we have to find a way to keep this movement not just another demonstration, another day, but keep it growing and building. So we've taken that action. We've had those meetings. We've now seen 75 locations organized. We're going to have a meeting on October 22nd where we'll meet with the organizers. We will certainly do this next year, but we're going to be doing more than this next year. In other words, we're going to start doing something before that. And so we encourage you, please, to sign up on the pledge. You've seen the pledge. Sign up on the mailing list so we can get back to you with the next action. And there are several things being considered. I'm not going to go into them now, but that meeting where we meet with representatives, hopefully something like 150 representatives from 75 locations across the country. We'll talk about what did you learn? What kind of coalitions did you build? Because a number of new coalitions have been built in various places. And what do you think we can do next? Because it's not only is it not over, it's only just begun. So please sign up, please sign the pledge, please listen and be on the list to find out what we're doing. And we'll see you here again, probably in a lot bigger numbers. Thank you.
As our last group gets set up, we'd like to show our gratitude. Thank you. Thank you for all of you for coming to our event and for everybody in person and online. Thank you to the Church of the Holy Trinity and all the staff and volunteers. They've been amazing. Thank you to all the volunteers in person and online from the sponsoring groups, GASP, Call, and Scan. And thanks to the Canada-wide organizing committee members for Seniors for Climate Action. And please remember to sign your pledge and sign up for emails with the Seniors for Climate. Share what you've learned here today with your friends, family, faith groups, and community groups. Please remember to take your placards and signs so that you're ready for the next climate action rally. The church is available until 5:30, so please make your way slowly. Thank you for participating today and see you at the next rally.